have an exchange experience in the United States. And as a result, there's a select group of Americans that get to go back to Pakistan to see that country and learn from them on the ground there. And I was chosen to be one of those people. As Jane mentioned, the program is administered by the Gaylord College. It's also funded by the U.S. State Department, the Department of State. So there you see a picture of Pakistan. I did not take this picture. All except two pictures in this slideshow I took. This is not one. This is actually in Lahore. We did not go to Lahore because it was considered a difficult region to be in, especially for journalists during this period of time. So we avoided Lahore, although many of the people that had come to the United States that we had met and become friends with were journalists and still are journalists in Lahore. So we arrived in Pakistan in early December, and we spent a week there. So here's a quick travel log to show you what we did in Pakistan. And a little bit of history first. Pakistan originally was ruled by the Queen. Queen Elizabeth was the Queen of Pakistan, and Pakistan was partitioned from India in 1947. It's the only nation, at least at that time, the only nation established based on religion. So when Pakistan was partitioned away from India, Muslims went to Pakistan, Sikhs and Hindus to India, and it pretty much established the government and the way of life in Pakistan. So Islam is practiced there primarily. 1956, actually the Republic of Pakistan was formed in 1956, and the official name is the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. In 1971, there was a civil war. You may remember, those of you that know some world history and geography, that Pakistan actually was divided into West Pakistan and East Pakistan. And in 1971, East Pakistan became Bangladesh, and West Pakistan became Pakistan. In 1998, Pakistan conducted its first nuclear test. It has the 11th largest armed forces in the world, and also is a nuclear power since 1998. In 2007, Pakistan and India signed a nuclear agreement. There have been a lot of tensions between Pakistan and India, especially as it relates to the land of Kashmir. But they signed an agreement, essentially a non-nuclear agreement in 2007. Also that year, Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto was assassinated. Pakistan has a history of political assassinations and unrest and turmoil and changes in governments, and it's a fascinating place. Suicide bombing at Islamabad Marriott Hotel in 2008, where we were supposed to stay, but we did not. We stayed at the Serena Hotel in Islamabad, but in 2008, a suicide bombing at the Islamabad Marriott Hotel killed 53 people. So security was very tight, especially for us. I'll show you where we stayed. But the bottom line is we were well guarded, we were well defended, and we had security with us. There was also security at the hotels, very intense security, and a lot of security at the U.S. State Department consulate in Karachi, where we also visited. 2011, Special Forces of the United States killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. That was in Abbottabad, where he had been holed up. And in 2014, the education activist Malala Yousafzai won the Nobel Peace Prize, becoming the youngest Nobel Peace Prize winner in history at the age of 17. Here she is pictured. This is another picture I did not take because we could not go to where she is. This is her pictured in the Swat Valley, beautiful valley. Islamabad, it lies at the foothills of the Himalaya Mountains. Beautiful country. So many people might think of those kinds of countries like Afghanistan or Pakistan as places where there's just a lot of sand and dirt and desolate regions, but actually it's very beautiful in much of the country. And as you can see, the mountains in the background and Malala in the Swat Valley. So about Pakistan, the population is about 216 million people. The capital is Islamabad, as you can see up toward the north. The largest city is Karachi, where we landed and where we spent the first few days. The population in Karachi is almost 16 million people. The area is, well, you can see 881,000 square kilometers, which makes it the 33rd largest country in the world. The predominant language is Urdu. The predominant religion is Islam. The government there is a parliamentary democracy, although that has changed and there are different shades of that over time, depending on who is in power. The current prime minister is Imran Khan, who is an internationally known cricket player. And that's how he rose to prominence and became prime minister of the country. As I said, the country has gone through a lot of governments over the years because, well, Pakistan was really founded, civilization began there in 6000 BC. They've been doing this stuff for a long time. So that's a little bit of the backstory of Pakistan. You can see the map. Karachi down in the south, next to, right along the Arabian Sea, just north of the Tropic of Cancer. And so that's where we landed. Later, we went to the north to Islamabad during our time there. All right, so when we are, skipped one. When we arrived in Pakistan, this was a view out of my window of Karachi on Sunday morning. That's what it looked like. You can see a little bit of the smog there. Again, 16 million people do generate quite a bit of pollution and smog. This was our delegation, David Fritzie on the left, who is the executive editor of Oklahoma Watch, Joe Foote, Dean Emeritus at the Gaylord College, Duri Buskaran, next to Joe. She is an NPR correspondent based in Istanbul. Shaista Khan, who was our guide and host. She is with UX, a women's activism group in Pakistan, and a journalist as well. And she was one of the journalists who had been in Oklahoma that we originally met earlier, about 2 years before we went to Pakistan. So Shaista was our guide and interpreter to the extent that we needed an interpreter. Most of the people in Pakistan speak English. There I am, and next to me, to my left, is Taylor Newcomb, an OU grad who is a reporter anchor at Channel 6 in Tulsa. So that was our delegation, minus Jody Foote, who was taking the picture. And we are in the lobby of the hotel where we stayed in Karachi. All right, let's see. It's hard for me to see what we're doing next. Click next. Okay, so Sunday night we went to a welcome reception. Our hosts, I mentioned UX, which is a women's rights group. They were our hosts there, our sponsors on the ground. And so the leader of UX is named Tasneem, and her husband is the editor of the Dawn newspaper, which is the major newspaper in Karachi. This was at their house. This is the entrance to their house. It was well guarded behind walls with armed guards on the gates. But once inside, it was a really festive place with great food, great drink, a lot of interesting people there, including a Pakistani rock star that I didn't really pick up on, but the women in the crowd realized he was some kind of a rock star, looked a little bit like Elvis. There were military leaders there. There were a lot of journalists there and people that were involved in various social causes. Here is the inside of their home. This is their living room just inside. You can see how that's appointed. And then the next picture is outside in the, outside in the garden where we all gathered and ate and conversed and had a great time. So that is a home in Pakistan, again, well guarded inside walls down a very nondescript street. If you didn't know where you were going, you wouldn't have any idea what was actually inside, but we found out. Next up, our accommodations. So this is where we stayed. This is the lobby of the hotel in Karachi, where we spent the first few days. So this is in Karachi, beautiful hotel, beautiful lobby, exchanged money there. And this is, the next picture is the lobby, or one of the lobbies, in the Serena Hotel in Islamabad, where we stayed. We stayed in 5-star hotels, so not everybody gets these kinds of accommodations. So we felt safe, we felt well attended, could not drink the water, but I'm used to that if you're in South Asia or East Asia. So that's a picture of where we stayed. This is traffic in Karachi. This is what it looks like. Now, not on Sunday morning when we arrived, the traffic was really quite light, but on a regular day in Karachi, this is pretty much what it looks like. So you can see the contrast, and indeed, Pakistan is a nation of contrast. You can see the contrast between where we stayed and what's outside. Now, not every place is like this, but a lot of Karachi in particular look like this. And so there was a lot of traffic, as I mentioned, about 16 million people, and they are driving and riding in every conceivable vehicle, and space, well, you know, lines are there maybe, but nobody pays attention. So it's quite the free-for-all on the roads in Karachi, just as they are in Bangladesh. Now, here's where we got around in. We rode in a van. As you can see, Joe is getting ready to board, and you can see one of the two armed guards that were with us, they actually carried Glocks and machine guns. So we felt safe when we went inside the compound. We had to have our vehicle swept with metal detectors, bomb detectors. Every time we would enter and leave, we would have to go through security, actually 2 layers of security, and magnetometers when we checked our bags. And every time we went and came back, we had to go through 2 layers of security to get into the hotel. I can tell you, you saw the picture of what it's like on the ground in Karachi. It's a lot better to see that from inside of a van. But that's what it looked like out of our window. Lots of people on motorcycles. That seemed to be the favored method of travel for many, many people. Not cars, not vans, but motorcycles. And there's a picture, another one that I took out the window. You can see this is what it really looks like down on the ground along the street in Karachi. Our first stop was at the Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture. This is one of the projects of a student. The picture that you see over on the left side is outside in the courtyard. This was one student's art project for the semester. We arrived late in the semester, so we got to see a lot of the projects that the students had prepared. The gardens inside the building. And here's a view from outside on the deck, actually on the landing in the building, looking to the west. And if you look far enough out there, you can see that it looks like the vegetation ends, and as it gets closer, it's marshier land and sandier land. And if you look way far out, you can see the Arabian Sea. So that's where we were located in relation to the Arabian Sea, taking the picture from the Architecture and Art School. They are known for textiles there. Among other things, there are looms where they are making textiles, such as this. You can see an example of what we saw as they were making various cloth for things like that. This is one of the students who actually designed the fabric and then was designing the clothes. So a lot of the clothes that you may see on the street in Pakistan are very drab, they're very functional, but that's about it. But again, it's a nation of contrast, and this is some of the fabric and some of the styling that is going on among younger people in Pakistan. This is one of the students, and her project for the semester was to design this clothing. Inside the art school, you can see pictures of self-portraits of the various students on the wall. So we had a chance to look at their portraits. The school itself, it's interesting, has no heating or air conditioning. It's open air. It's open air. So this was actually outside, but just covered. And one thing that really jumped out at all of us, and I took a picture of it, it's on the right, the blue. It says, your thesis will look great. Will it also do good? That was a theme that we saw over and over and over again in Pakistan is, are you doing good? It's a very socially conscious place. And young people in particular were focused on domestic violence, focused on the environment, focused on a lot of social issues. And I thought it was very refreshing to actually see and hear what they're thinking about some of the social issues that confront every nation, including here, but also in Pakistan. So they were very focused on doing good for other people. We went to GOTV, looks pretty much like any TV station I've ever been in, and most TV stations that you will see. It was in another nondescript building. There are the anchors and there's the newsroom. So they do everything. Actually, the teleprompter is the same one I'm used to using for years. Looks like just about any newsroom you would ever see. One thing we found out, though, from the manager of the station is that there is self-censorship in Pakistan. The military does not like it when you say things that might be construed as derogatory toward the military. And the military has a lot of power there by virtue of being aligned with the prime minister. And so what can happen in Pakistan is self-censorship, because although they say it's a free press, you're free to say and write anything you want to. If there are certain words that are spoken that they don't like, you may find out that your cable channel, which was on the upper tier of cable channels, easily found in the first 20 channels, let's say, now is located on a tier down around 300 something, where nobody can find you. So it's subtle censorship that is imposed by the government from time to time, which then causes journalism organizations to self-censor because they don't want to have that happen to them. It's a problem because once you go from the top tier down to a bottom tier, you lose your advertisers. And this is something that we found in Pakistan that they have to deal with every day. Newsflash, though, we practice self-censorship in the US too. We just don't talk about it very much. But it was very evident in Pakistan. We went to the Karachi Press Club. This is outside of the Karachi Press Club. You can see motorcycles, again, are the preferred mode of transportation. The conference hall is in the back where we played pool and had pictures taken. But this is outside in the courtyard of the Karachi Press Club, which is a refuge for a lot of people. The Karachi Press Club not only welcomes journalists where they can be safe, where they can talk, where they can discuss issues, but it's also a place where the citizens can go, and it's essentially a free speech zone. So it's well established that once you get on the grounds of the Karachi Press Club, you can speak freely about anything you want to. And the military, interestingly enough, knows that. They're instructed to leave people alone, and they do. So people can protest against the government. They can say whatever they want to say within reason. And they are protected at the Karachi Press Club. Here we are in the Karachi Press Club after we got our scarves. I'm wearing mine, but you can see those of us in the back, along with some of our friends. Just about everybody that you see in that picture from Pakistan, we had already met when they had visited Norman and the United States. So it was a great homecoming. There were lots of hugs, and it was a very collegial environment. I can't express to you enough how emotional it was to see our friends and colleagues that we had gotten to know here in the US in their home in Karachi. And of course, selfies. There are Joe and Jody with a selfie being taken. Again, one of the people that we met here in the US, a journalist in Pakistan. We went to the International Islamic School. This is the college for men and women. It's segregated. There's a male campus, there's a female campus. I had the opportunity to talk to these young graphic designers there. And so you see the picture on the left where I'm explaining to them about graphic design and video production in the United States, but I was really taken by the fact that behind them you see this quote. Can you see the quote? Mm-hmm. It says, "If you can dream it, you can do it." Walt Disney. So I asked them, do you know who Walt Disney is? They did not. So I explained to them who Walt Disney is and the wonderful world of color and Disneyland and Disney World and all of that. And I said, one thing you should remember, and they liked this, one thing you should remember is that the people that Walt Disney hired to do beautiful films and to build theme parks and do all the great creative things that Walt Disney and Walt Disney Productions did, he called those people Imagineers. And I said, if you think about it, you are today's Imagineers. Now take your creative skills and go do something good with it. And they loved it. Female campus. Here are some of the young women that we met. we actually went to the female campus, which is about a half a mile away from the male campus. And they were on break in between classes. So we had a chance to visit and take pictures. These are some of the young women that we met and visited with. They were a little bit reluctant to get too close at first, but it didn't take long before we were very close. This was before COVID-19, barely. And so we were able to get up close and talk and visit and get to know each other. And as you can see, Taylor Newcomb, she's 6'2". And so she really stands out in a crowd. And so she drew quite a crowd from the women here at the International Islamic School for Women in Islamabad. So they thought she was fascinating. They came over and visited. And then there was one young woman right here, this one, with the phone in her hand. You can see that she's pretty well covered up. So she came over and saw Taylor, and here's what she said. "Hey girl, where are you from?" Just like that. And she said, "You know, where are you from, girl?" And Taylor said, "Well, I'm from Oklahoma." And she said, "What about you?" And she said, "Well, I'm from Michigan." So looks can be deceiving. Just looking at people, you might not really know where they're from, what they've done, what they're thinking, what their skills are. It was a great exchange of information as these two young women communicated with each other on a very personal level. It was fun. Inside the International Islamic University, we met with faculty members, and I want to draw attention to what is on the wall, the sign behind us. This again talks to the social consciousness that you find in Pakistan, at least in some places. And it says generation equality. And those are the faculty members that we had a chance to meet with. Next up, we went to another university. This is what's called the Open University, which means public university. And every place we went, we were treated as royalty. You see the sign outside, the Vice Chancellor welcoming all visitors from the University of Oklahoma, USA, and the date. There was that sign outside. There was a sign inside. There were signs in the room. We were really treated as royalty, as honored guests, just as we had been at the Karachi Press Club when they presented us with the scarves that they present to honored guests and honorary members of the Karachi Press Club. We received plaques and scarves and, of course, tea and cookies every place we went. So it was a great experience at the Open University, which is the public university, not aligned with a religion. We went to an independent news organization, which we would consider to be something like perhaps the Frontier or Oklahoma Watch or Non-Doc, independent nonprofit journalism organization. These were some of the signs on the wall. I will read it in case you can't see it. "Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers." Article 19 of their Constitution. The middle picture, assassination is the worst form of censorship. You can see that's a microphone. They're not talking about political assassinations. They're talking about assassinations of journalists. Safety of journalists is a concern there, especially women, And then the picture on the right, you can see Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who is the founder of Pakistan. And you can see what he had to say about the role of journalists. "I say protect the innocent, protect those journalists who are doing their duty and who are serving both the public and the government by criticizing the government freely, independently, honestly, which is an education for any government." Important words spoken in the late 1940s by the founder of Pakistan. And then we went to, once we got to Islamabad, we did our training. We did 2 days of training. This is the sign outside the door where we did our training at the Sarina Hotel in Islamabad. So we trained various journalists who gathered there. Here's Joe and Taylor talking to the group. We trained them on a variety of topics. We discussed data journalism. We discussed ethics in journalism. We discussed how to understand the news media, how to communicate with your audience better so that people understand what we do as journalists and why we are important. That was my main topic for my training. And also I showed them how to recognize fake news, actual fake news, news that is prepared by people that are meant to deceive others. And it's a real concern. This was fascinating to watch them as they learned about fake news and how to spot it, because it is a problem for journalists everywhere to source information and to learn about what is being presented as news that really is not. It really is propaganda. It really is directed, it's advocacy. And so it's a problem here, it's a problem in Pakistan. Here's a shot of some of the journalists that gathered with us for the 2-day session. And our session was called Impactful Journalism. And there you can see the next picture is David Fritzie from Oklahoma Watch explaining some of his techniques for data journalism and how to do deep dive data-driven interpretive journalism. Dury and David did this. You can see one of the people watching what they were preparing. Data journalism was a very important topic there. They were a very engaged group, very well read, very well spoken. The people in Pakistan that we met, who were mostly well educated and were journalists, knew a lot about American politics. When I was there, for instance, there was a man that we met at that initial party, and we met, said hello, he introduced himself, and he said, you know, I really like that Pete Buttigieg. I think he's a really strong young candidate. I thought, well, how do you know about him? He said, oh yeah, I follow American politics all the time. They know a lot more about us than we know about them, bottom line. But anyway, we were fortunate to be able to help train them. And you can see Taylor and Shaista are involved in this discussion about what it's like to be a female journalist. Here's what's interesting is that female journalists are threatened. There are safety issues. And because of that, their organizations tend to place female journalists in positions where they're not able to be as prominent as other journalists are, meaning men. So in other words, instead of getting assignments where you would go cover meaty topics, where you can make a name for yourself and you could progress in the profession, women journalists are often stuck behind the desk doing cooking stories or stories about domestic life, that kind of thing, which prevents them from actually rising in the profession like their male counterparts. So it's a double-edged sword for female journalists in Pakistan. And there's another shot of us. That's me with David Fritzie and some of our friends there. And Taylor talking about local news and what she does at Channel 6 in Tulsa, which is to be an MMJ, which is a one-person news operation. She shoots her own video, writes her own stories, edits her own stories. She talked about how she does that and how we do local news, as you can see in the background, in Oklahoma. And then on Friday, we drove by during the noon service time, just before the noon service, we drove by the Faisal Mosque, which is a contemporary mosque located in Islamabad. You can see the mountains behind. This mosque accommodates about 100,000 people. So you're just seeing part of it, but that is that's the entrance to the mosque just before the service. And so finally, we reached the end of our week, and as we were leaving, these are the last shots that I saw from our hotel at the Serena, because we were about 3 weeks away from Christmas. So season's greetings from Islamabad, Christmas trees, gingerbread houses, Christmas decorations everywhere. Season's greetings. So that's a quick venture through Pakistan and my trip. And if you have any questions, be happy to answer.
Dick, I have one.
Sure.
Are there any Christians in Pakistan? And if so, it sounds like it's a very you have all these, just like they said, to do good, and yet it seems like there's so much military and protection. It seems like it's a very unsafe place.
Not for us. Now, we went to the, I mentioned we went to the consulate, and to get into the consulate, you have to go through a gate. There's a wall around the compound, and then there's a second wall inside the compound. And so you're actually going through two levels of security with US military members on the gates, along with Pakistani security, and they have weapons. You go through a deep security, and then once you get into the building, you go through another wall and a big, thick door. So the security is very, very tight. And indeed, the State Department people told us that they are only allowed to go out to certain locations to eat, to go to the movies, to do shopping. There are certain locations in Islamabad, which is a beautiful city, by the way, and certainly in Karachi, places that you can go that are safe, other places that you wouldn't go. We find that to be true here too. So it's a little bit different. I tell people who've asked me, well, did you feel safe there? Well, yes, there was a lot of security. And I said, you know, everywhere you'd look, there was security, armed security on buildings, sensitive places, not driving up and down the street, but sensitive places. They're praying 5 times a day, and they have lots of guns for security. Didn't really feel threatened. But as far as Christians there are some Christians there, but it is a predominantly Muslim state, country.
Dick, Terry had a question asking you to explain what data journalism is.
Sure. Data journalism is to do research on data sets. So you gather information from credible sources. A lot of times it's academic research that you get. Academic research or government research or merely data that you collect through various means, surveying public opinion. And then you take that data and you analyze the data essentially to determine what is actually happening here. So let's use the COVID-19 as an example. So if you see a spike in the number of hospitalizations, you can reasonably assume that there is something happening. Now, you have to follow that story, but the data drives the story. So finding the data, being able to analyze the data in such a way that you can determine what might be happening here, and then using those conclusions to drive your journalism. That's what data journalism really is.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
The next question is from Jim Costello and wanting to know if there wasn't a division that was apparent between the Shia and the Sunni sects of Islam in Pakistan.
We didn't really experience that. I don't know. There is. And in certain parts of the country, that's more pronounced. The picture that I showed you of Malala in the Swat Valley, we were not allowed to go there. That's where there is Sunni and Shia discord. So they're constantly at odds over control of that region. And so, yes, there is discord, like you're suggesting, Jim.
Okay.
We just did not see it where we were. Karachi is huge. Islamabad is a beautiful city, and it's the capital. And so it just felt safer really in Islamabad. It's only about 1 million people.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Other questions of Dick? You can, I asked, okay. How Doug Miller or Zach Miller would like you to talk about how the food was.
Great. It was fabulous. Now, again, we ate mostly in the restaurant and the hotels. And so it was fabulous. Buffets, great pastries, great food. I thought it was terrific. I really missed the food. Now, there's no alcohol, unless you know people. There's no alcohol, but the food was fabulous and beautifully prepared and presented. The people there, very courteous, very customer-oriented, friendly, very attentive, and very welcoming. very, very welcoming.
Other questions? So my question, Dick, is what was maybe the most surprising experience or thing that you found or had on your trip to Pakistan?
That's an interesting question because I'd been to Bangladesh, I'd been to Dhaka, so I knew what it was like to be in a city of 16 million people. So I kind of got over that culture shock. I was not quite so awed by the traffic and by all of that and the smog and all those things. I'd seen that before. So this time I really paid closer attention to what the people were saying, what they were doing, what they were thinking. And I think what really stood out to me is that we are all in this together. They share the same concerns, the same hopes and fears and joys that we do too. They're just trying to make it through each day and to do good. And so looking at the people themselves, even those that are in those very depressed areas that have a lot of poverty, they're doing what they can. They mean well. And so I thought that was the real takeaway for me, is how many people in Pakistan are just like us. They live half a world away, but they operate motivated by most of the same things that we do. And really, we're all, and I think this is why international travel is so important. We're all part of a bigger family.
Very cool. Well, thank you. Other questions for for Dick? We're short on time, but it's just now 8 o'clock, but I think, Dick, do we have any other questions?
I have one question.
Yes.
Dick, you mentioned you were talking about safety, and when I was overseas, my perception, or my colleagues' perception, people from around the world, they said that they perceived America as a dangerous, scary place.
Yeah.
Of course, we perceive the Middle East as a dangerous, scary place. Were your journalism friends from Pakistan, did they have that kind of perception of America?
I will just say that from my time in Bangladesh 6 years ago to this last time to be in Pakistan, I detected a different feeling toward us, toward Americans, and it wasn't so much about whether we fear things or not, but there was a discernible concern about whether we're doing okay. You can make of that what you want. But there was a real concern, are you all okay? Is everything okay there? There seemed to be a concern about the direction that the United States is heading and what life is like here. And I think that's why I felt more of a personal connection this time, because they were really emitting that personal connection, hoping that everything was going to turn out okay here in the United States. And it reminded me that the rest of the world looks to us for leadership. So that was really interesting. One other thing I will say, so our trip, we went from Oklahoma City to Dallas, Dallas to Paris, Paris to Doha, Doha to Karachi, and then Karachi to Islamabad, and then Islamabad to London, and London to Chicago, and Chicago to Oklahoma City. Yeah. The trip back took 30 hours. Woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning in Karachi, got on the plane, and was sleeping at 11 o'clock that night in Norman. A 30-hour day in less than 24 hours. Guess where my bags were lost?
Chicago?
Between Chicago and Oklahoma City.
Did you ever find them?
Of course they were.
Yeah, they arrived about a day later.
Yeah. Well, Dick, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. It sounds like a fascinating trip. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Next week, April Heipel is going to be our program from Food and Shelter, kind of giving us an update of what's going on there with the huge increase in demand they've experienced. But Dick, as always, it's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
My pleasure.
Your experiences. And with that, go out and virtually connect with the world, or at least from 6 feet away. Have a great week. And Michael rang the bell, so we're all good. Bye, everybody.
All right.